Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Good evening and a very warm welcome to everyone. I am Manu Kashyapa from Advaita Academy. Let us begin with a small prayer. Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpada Shankaram Lokashankaram. I welcome you all to yet another session of Weekend with Wisdom. Today we have a very special guest, Shri Surya Tahora ji. Surya ji, I welcome you.
Thank you. Yeah. So should I switch my video?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Today, Surya Tahora ji will be speaking on the topic, The Quest for the Infinite, Stories from the Upanishads. Surya ji, thank you for accepting our invitation and joining us today. For the benefit of our viewers, I would like to introduce Surya ji. Surya Tahora studied Indian philosophy with Swami Dayananda Saraswati, a well-known contemporary teacher of Advaita Vedanta in the tradition of Adi Shankaracharya. Surya Tahora has a doctorate in pharmaceutical sciences for the industry from Paris University and an MBA. He has also attended an intensive executive program at INSEAD School of Management. He worked for several years in L'Oreal Group and Air France in international marketing and strategic planning, both in Paris and Bangkok. He is currently Director, Center for Wisdom in Leadership and Professor at SPJIMR, that is SP Jain Institute of Management and Research, Mumbai, India. He is teaching spirituality and management for MBA and executive MBA students in the university. Since 1999, Surya and his wife Nima Majmudar have been giving conferences, conducting seminars and retreats across the world, both in English and French, in the domain of human development and philosophy. The seminars and retreats they conduct incorporate concepts of Indian philosophy with Western psychology, ethics, physics, neurobiology, and management. These activities are aimed at guiding individuals and leaders of various organizations to be more objective, dynamic, and compassionate in an increasingly interconnected and complex world. Surya ji, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Manu, and thank you to Advaita Academy for inviting me. So it's always a pleasure to speak for you guys. And just before I start, since today is Guru Purnima, I would like to salute my teacher, so Puja Swamiji, Swami Dayananda Saraswati, and the entire lineage of teachers, and that with all my love, my reverence, and my gratitude. So allow me to just chant a few verses of prayer. Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Gaganasatrisham Tattvamasya Dilaksham Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadi Sakshibhutam Bhavatitam Trigunaraitam Satgurum Tam Namami.
Viewers, if you have any question, please post them in Q&A box. Surya ji will be taking up towards the end of the session. Surya ji, please start your session.
Okay. So good morning, namaste everyone. And so when Manu invited me and Advaita Academy to give these two talks, I was wondering what I could talk about. And one thought came to me. And that thought was, I remember 20 years ago, as I was attending classes by Swamiji in Rishikesh, he had said something interesting. he said that there are many stories, many imageries, analogies, small parables, which are found in the Upanishads themselves. And he was jokingly saying that it will be a nice subject matter for a PhD student or a student of Vedanta to do some work on that. Okay, so this is the thought which came to my mind. And what do these stories or imageries convey? How they are used by the teachers to help the students see some aspects of the teaching. Okay, and so here we are. Okay, so only a few stories. Okay, it's not PhD. A few selected stories and imageries from the Upanishad about the quest for the infinite. So what I will do is that I will bring, just to give you an outline of what I will do today and tomorrow, I will bring some portion of Chandogya Upanishad, this story of Gandhara Purusha in chapter 6, then chapter 7 with Narada and Sanat Kumara. Then there will be a dialogue between Yajnavalkya and Maitreyi from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. And then we will end today by this story of Nachiketa and Lord Yama from Katha Upanishad. Okay. And tomorrow, Sunday evening, we'll see this beautiful imagery of the two birds from Mundaka Upanishad. And this amazing and fun stories about the Deva and the Yaksha from Kena Upanishad. Okay, so this is what we'll do. So let's start by this story found in the chapter 6 of Chandogya Upanishad. So what is the story about? So, short story. A person from Gandhara province is left blindfolded and bound in the middle of a deserted forest, maybe by some robbers. He doesn't know where he is, and he's alone in this wilderness. So desperate, he shouts. He shouts to the east and the west, to the south and the north. And he says, I'm bound and blindfolded. I've been left here. Please help me. And then a compassionate person hears him and frees him from his bondage and his blindfold. And this person points out to him the direction he should go to get back to his home in Gandhara. So free from his bonds and his blindfold, he now takes the right direction, goes and walks from one village to the other. He still has very much his goal in mind to get back home. He remembers what he has been told and reflects upon it. And finally, makes it to his way home to Gandhara. Okay, so that is the story. It's a very short story, just two verses in this chapter 6. And there is not much detail, really speaking, in the Upanishad. Only this. Then the Upanishad proceeds. And Shankaracharya, of course, as the commentator of these two verses, gives us the keys of this story. Okay, so he makes us see, first of all, what is the life of a samsari who is lost? Okay, in a life of becoming, what is it like? Okay, so beautiful the way he's explaining this story is that somehow this Gandhara Purusha, Jiva, any one of us, finds himself in the forest, Aranyam, the Jagat, the world. Okay, and the person doesn't know where he is. He's blindfolded, and he doesn't know how he will get back to his home. Okay, so what does the blindfold stand for? It stands for this confusion and this delusion. And what is this delusion about? It is his identification with his body, mind, sense complex, which makes him blind to who he is really, right? So he takes the attributes of and the dharma of the body and mind as his own attributes. He takes himself to be a limited jiva confined to this particular body and mind with limited knowledge and power. And obviously, if this is the starting point of his, let's say, mistake about himself, right? As things do not go his way, like what he's experiencing now, he's subject to fear is subject to sorrow, is subject to anxiety and frustration and despair. So even though in his life, before he got in this situation, there were times where he experienced joy, moments of pleasure, still he had to go through this, let's say, through all these opposites, all this dvandva, like this pleasure and pain, sukha dukkha, so on. And he's thirsty and hungry now, and he's sad and he's lost in this forest. And it's a great forest with many sources of fear, potentially, some known and some unknown. There are wild animals there. And there are also, we can add here, there are dangerous viruses also who are like floating around. Okay. So we can imagine what he would be telling himself in this situation. What happened to me? I was happy and I was doing well. I am a good person. I am living an ethical life. I'm following dharma. I'm doing my prayers and so on. But now I am confused. I'm lost and I might die soon. My wealth, my possession, or my fame, they are gone. My wife and children, they are gone. I am alone and totally helpless here. How will I ever survive now in this world, in this vast forest? And what is going to happen to me, right? So to make it relatable to us, obviously there are also challenging moments in our life, right? Where we begin to ask ourselves this kind of existential questions, right? And trying to make sense of the life we have been living. And wondering if there is anything more in life than what we have been experiencing. And if there is here any way out of this acute, let's say, human predicament, right? So Shankaracharya continues his commentary and he says, what has brought him here to this situation? So Shankaracharya says, his past karma, his purva punya papa led him to this forest, to having this body and this life of sukha and dukkha, right? And the punya papa are the two thieves, the two robbers that dropped him here, kidnapped him, robbed him, and left him alone in this forest. And obviously the forest he was brought to is not his original place. He's away from his home. So his home stands for what he is essentially, really, right? His home is Gandhara, where he longs to go back to, right? So he's distressed, as we saw, he shouts as he wants to be released from his suffering and all what binds him. So here we can say at that point, what is he looking for? He's looking for freedom. He has become a mumukshu, a seeker of freedom. Freedom from his helplessness, freedom from sadness, freedom from all what binds him. And he's wondering if there is anything that will save him from this life of becoming, this life of opposites, of pain and pleasure, which alternate incessantly, and where there seems to be no way out. Okay. And interestingly, you remember the short story, Shankara says that it is because of Ishvara's grace, Ishvara Anugraha, that the teacher comes to him, hearing him. Right? And we can say here, and this is also quite appropriate because it's Guru Purnima, that finding a teacher is a very special kind of punya, and which gets an individual to find a way out of his predicament, right? So this teacher is compassionate, and he heard him shouting and crying, and he helps him out. Okay, and this is one of the points conveyed by the story. Acharyavan Purusha Janati Veda iti. Okay, so the one who has the teachers knows. Okay, so it's a very interesting point here conveyed by this story. Now let's go to this teacher. What is this teacher? This teacher, the one who helped him, was a compassionate person. Okay. One in whose vision, really speaking, the samsara is not bound at all. Because there is nothing really physical that binds or blindfolds the samsara, an ignorant person. So the one who has this identification with his body and mind sense complex thinks and has concluded that he has a problem. And the teacher has to solve a problem that himself doesn't really see, right? And that is why Shankara is saying that he is like compassionate, because that takes an extra ounce of compassion, right? To help somebody where you don't see really problem, right? And in fact, what is interesting here is that the teacher appreciates very well the situation, because he too was in this kind of situation also at one time, confused about who he was. And this teacher knows the whole methodology of teaching. He has the sampradaya with him, all this lineage, this tradition of teaching. And then out of this compassion, he shows the way to this Gandhara Purusha, to this Jiva, okay? The marga, the way to look differently at himself. Okay. So what does he teach him? It teaches him how to reach home. And this home, in fact, is himself. Really speaking, there is no traveling. Okay? So it's just a metaphor of this journey, this pursuit, right? And as he's shown, let's say, the way to reach home himself, he's no more lost now, because his life has gained a direction. He gets to know what is to be achieved. The Purushartha becomes clear. And with the help of the teacher, he examines all what has led him to conclude that he is a doer, a karta, and a bhokta, subject to sorrow and death, or a victim, persecuted by a dangerous world, right? So this is the idea here. And what is happening is that the teacher methodically and patiently reveals to him the way to the infinite. So the first central element of this marga, this way, this journey, is what? It's about listening to the teaching first. So this Gandhara Purusha, he did listen to the teaching attentively. He did Shravana, right? And what is this Shravana about? Hey, you are not a samsari. You are this conclusion that you are a jiva is just a point of view. In fact, you are the Sadvastu, the infinite, and that is yourself. That is Atma, Tattvamasi. Okay, so the background of all this Upanishad, already the teaching about Tattvamasi had gone and had been revealed. Okay, so then this person is released by the removal of this cloth, which was binding him. Here the cloth stands for moha, this confusion, this delusion, this mistake that about the truth of himself. And this moha is born of ignorance, right? And by the removal, elimination of avidya, this ignorance, he is free. Mokshita. Okay? And this is how he traced back his way home to his essential nature, to the infinite that he is. Okay? So every jiva is a Gandhara Purusha, okay? Person from Gandhara. Like in this story, we can also find our way to our Gandhara, back home, our own nature. Okay. And what is beautiful here, and this is the metaphor here, it's a journey to discover ourselves. And it is in the form of the pursuit of self-knowledge, exposing ourselves to the teaching with the help of a teacher. So there is removal of doubts as well. Sometimes going out off track for a certain time in our journey. And then coming back to the right track, patiently, with perseverance, keeping our goal in mind, and knowing very well that it takes time. It's a journey where we have to use fully our buddhi, like this Gandhara is told to be a Medhavi. Okay, he's able to use his Buddha. And it's a beautiful journey where all situation and people that like this traveler going back home, where all situation and people we meet on our way is used to grow, to become more mature in certain areas which are needed, and then coming back home. Okay, so this is the story of this Gandhara Purusha, and let us hear now some other stories. Okay, some other stories about this encounter, which is particularly, let's say, revealing between a teacher and a student who is a seeker of freedom, a mumukshu. Okay, and how a human being comes to this kind of defining moment in his life, a turning point in his life, which impels him or her to take on the quest for this infinity. Okay, and what is interesting, so we have seen one way that these characters of these various stories come to this teaching. Here it is out of this very challenging situation and total helplessness. So how the other characters of some other stories come to begin their journey. Okay, it's revealed now through some story, and the next one we'll take is in the chapter 7 of the same Upanishad, which begins with Narada, okay, who is approaching a teacher, and this teacher is Sanat Kumara. So Narada, well-known, very colorful character in the Purana, okay, and he's a Deva Rishi, okay. So, and he can go and travel at will anywhere to any loka, okay. And Sanat Kumara, the teacher, is the son of Brahmaji, and he was taught by Lord Shiva, Dakshinamurti himself. Okay? And even as the context is set up, only by these two names, when these two names of these rishis is used, I mean, it's very significant. The fact that Narada went to Sanat Kumara tells us that there is meaningful here, which is going to happen. Okay, so how is it going? So Sanat Kumara, seeing Narada, first asked Narada, what is it that, what knowledge you have brought with you, Narada? And what do you already know? Because he knew he's a Devarshi. So he said, yeah, what is it that brings you here? And what do you know? And he told him that after hearing him out, he would teach him. Okay. So Narada says, so listen well and hold your breath, and I will also hold my breath. I have studied and I can repeat for you all the 4 Vedas, Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, Atharva Veda. I know all the 4 Vedas. I know also all the Puranas. I know grammar. I know how to perform rituals to the ancestors. I know mathematics. I know the reading of this indication and augurs. I know logic and Dharma Shastra. I know Niruktam, the sourcing of words, and Mimamsa, hermeneutics and analytical, let's say, interpretation of any text. I know the 6 Vedanga, including prosody. I know physics. I know astrology. I know astronomy. I have studied the sciences of war. I know the fine arts as well. I know architecture and temple construction. And he goes on and on and on, right? So it's impressive, right? So if we translate Narada in our contemporary context, okay, it will be something like a person listing all the various PhDs he has with him, the multiple research papers and books he has published in so many different, let's say, domains of knowledge. Or it can be a person who is listing his experience in many sectors, from high-tech to health, banking to FMCG, across geographies all across the world, as CEO, as consultant, as member of several boards of multinational companies. Okay, highly educated, highly experienced, highly knowledgeable. Okay. This is Narada coming to Sanat Kumara. Okay. Then Narada speaks about what brought him to approach Sanat Kumara. In spite of all this very impressive list of knowledge that he has gathered and mastered. Okay. And very interesting, he says, Shrutam hi eva me bhagavad drishyabhyaha tarati shokam atmavit iti. I heard that the one who knows the self, Atma, crosses sorrow, goes beyond sorrow. Then he says, Soham bhagavaha sochami. I feel sorrowful. I feel lacking. I am in grief. Tamma bhagavan shokasya param tarayatu iti. Help me cross. Help me go beyond this sorrow and lead me to the other side. So it's amazing. A person of the stature and the brilliance of Narada admitting, Sochami, and please, Sanat Kumara, teach me, help me cross. Okay, so a very touching moment here, where all the brilliance, the apparent external achievements, reveal behind that there is a person, okay, who understands that all the knowledge and experiences that he has accumulated didn't address his anxiety, his inexplicable sorrow. It didn't fulfill his sense of incompleteness, this human longing for fullness, and the need for a deeper meaning to his life. Okay. All the knowledge that he has gathered, which is also called aparavidya, did not lead him to the knowledge of the infinite. Right? And what Narada feels is called in Sanskrit a kritartha buddhi, a sense of incompleteness, which is centered on the self, on himself. Right? Shoka, this sorrow, sochami, I am in grief, I am sorrowful, is the conclusion that the jiva attributes to I, to himself. And what is interesting here is that Atma Vidya, and this is what Narada has heard, Atmavid Tarati Shokam. Atma Vidya is a negation of this sorrow. And not knowing your nature alone is the cause for shoka, for sorrow. So self-knowledge is the boat to the other shore. Okay, and Shakara says here very, very beautifully that there can be an end to this ocean of shoka. And Narada could have said in other words, with this boat of self-knowledge, Atma Jnana, O Bhagavan, O Sanat Kumar, bring me to this Kritartha Buddhi, to feel full and complete. Okay. So then what happens in the story? Sanat Kumar accepts the request from Narada and he teaches him. And he tells him, all that you have listed, all these disciplines of knowledge, it's impressive. It's a lot. It's significant. Yes. But they are nothing but nama, nothing but names. And in fact, he tells him, Narada, all what you know is a lot, but you don't know what is the essential. What you know is only what is non-essential. Very powerful statement. Okay, so we'll see more about what is the meaning of that. And then Narada asks him, but then tell me, is there anything more than nama, all these namas that I know? And Sanat Kumar tells him, yes, there is more. And then obviously Narada asks him, please tell me that. I want to know that. Okay. And then all this part in this Upanishad, which is beautiful. begins. And Sanat Kumara teaches him that there is nothing, there is not anything which is outside Bhuma. So Bhuma is another word which is a synonym for this infinite, the limitless, okay, Brahman. And he tells him, any nama you take, any name or form, which stands for one object or a phenomenon, a pursuit you take, an experience that you have, you can have or you have had, anything in this world of nama rupa, of names and forms, anything you can take on or even think about is finite, limited, alpam. Why? Yeah, it is bound by time and space, and it's subject to comparison, right? And then he continues and it says, in the finite, in alpa, there cannot be any sukha, any happiness or joy, which is lasting. And then he continues and it says, Bhuma, Brahman, this infinite alone is sukha. Okay. Now, listen to that. If like Narada, I have to be sukhi, I have to be content or happy, then it has to be at all places, at all times. It means now and forever. It means that nothing related to my body, mind, and senses, nothing related to anything should inhibit this sukha. Neither time, neither place, nor any kind of situation should condition this sukham. So it means that this sukham has to be a sukham which is agantikam sukham, a happiness that cannot come and go in various degrees of intensities. Okay? Sukha, 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 dukkha, dukkha, sukha, dukkha, sukha, dukkha. Swamiji used to do that, to portray what is this life which is in this alpa, right? So it's not the sukham we're speaking about. It's not something that can be created. It's not something can be set up by my will, my efforts. It cannot be arrived at by actions. Why? Because these actions themselves are limited. So if I have to be sukhi, it means that that sukham cannot be centered on anything else than myself. I have to be this sukha, this ananda. And that only can be the real nature of yourself, of Atma. And I am not limited. So this is the whole teaching. What is the whole teaching about? With this logic. Okay? You are a parachinna. You are not limited. You are limitless. And your love, another supporting logic is to say what? Your love for joy, for ananda, reveals in fact your love to be free from any limitation. And this love to be free from limitation is love to be Uma, the infinite that you are already. Okay. And as we know, Narada said that he had heard that Atmavid Shokam Tarati. He clearly wants to know about Atma, have this knowledge of the self, right? So now, look at this. What is that Atma? Further, Sanat Kumar teaches Narada that Atma is not subject to dukkha. And it's not also this sukham that you can manage to get sometimes and not at others, because it would be limited. As we saw, because it would be dependent on body, mind, and so many other factors to make a happy moment take place. And that for a limited time only. And then comes this big revelation, this limitlessness, this Bhuma. It is what you want. Not only that, but it is what you are already. And the whole teaching is about the discovery of ourselves as Bhuma. Why? Because it is the content of any experience, which come and go. It is the content of all the conditions of mind, which come and goes. Happiness, different degrees. And also sadness, pain. So this Bhuma, this limitless, includes not only the subject and all these various conditions, it is which sustain all of them, but it includes also the objects. All the objects. Otherwise, if it was only centered, it was only limited here in this body-mind sense complex, it will be still limited because there will be so many other things which are not this. So it has to be, and it includes also all the objects, known and unknown. And that is what limitless is, right? So Bhuma is that which is both the content and the truth of both subject and object. So it's not something you do. It's not an outcome, again, of any meditative, special meditative practices. It's not an event which will happen sometime. It is already you. It's already accomplished, present there. And it has to be seen as it is. And to see Bhuma, another misconception. You don't need to bring everything together, all the objects and all the beings in the universe, and try to see them at one, as a one undifferentiated mass or one thing, and you crush everything and you make it into a blob and you say, yeah, this is the one. No, right? What is needed is what, while these subject objects are there in all this variety and multiplicity, okay, what you need to have is to have another look and see their reality and see that they both depend upon Bhuma, upon this infinite. Take an ant, take a micro, take any subject object experience, take a mountain, take some clouds, some rivers, some trees, and see what is their content. Right? So the looker, the look, and the experience of looking, all three of them are pervaded, are sustained by this limitless consciousness and existence. Okay? And the relationship, in technical terms, is, as you know, some of you know, is just Satyamitya relationship. Just like seeing the pot, while all this, the pot is there very much. You see that in terms of reality, it is Mithya. And you see how it is pervaded, sustained by what? By clay, which is Satyam, which is its reality. So in the same way, subject and object, in their multiplicity and variety, diversity, across time and space, are all pervaded, sustained by you, this infinite, which is the Satyam of everything. Okay. Now, another point which needs to be understood well in this story, I said I will come back on that, and really needs to be emphasized. The risk is that by glorifying this vidya, this knowledge, and opposing it to, let's say, secular knowledge, apara vidya, and opposing it to Brahma vidya, okay, there is a risk that we fall into what is called a polarized thinking, and saying what? Labeling all this so-called apara vidya as useless, and saying that only the knowledge of the self counts as important. You should not pursue any other kind of knowledge, okay? So it's important here to have some clarity The Upanishads do not condemn or belittle the pursuit of any disciplines of knowledge, of aparavidya. Why? First, there is an intrinsic, an essential need of any human being, an essential desire from a human being to know things. And we have been given this amazing capacity, which is called Jnana Shakti, to know more about the world and how it works. And that is healthy and natural. So we cannot abort this and fall into this trap. Second, we have at the same time to understand that all what we have come to know through all these discoveries, through science and technology and so on, they have improved spectacularly our standard of life over several centuries. So quickly, the average longevity has increased, right? Our capacity to fight many diseases improved. You look at how, in a short time, we have come to find this vaccine for this COVID. It's like just very impressive, right? Education as well. Illiteracy, let's say, has decreased as well. Poverty also. Of course, there are pockets, and there is a big disparity across the globe. Okay, so we are not also falling into another trap again. And even if, see, the very paradigm on which our society, our modern society is based, this capitalism and this liberal, let's say, views, is now questioned as well with all the challenges that we're facing, right? Including this disparity. So many disparities. Even though overall it has improved, there are still a lot of disparities. But that is another, let's say, subject matter. Okay. But the argument, what I want to emphasize here, is that the argument is very clear. The argument is about the limit of aparavidya. But in what way? Aparavidya doesn't enable us to get, it enables us to get all this, longevity, education, and so on, health, and so on. But it doesn't liberate us from the anxiety born of living, the fear of mortality, the need to feel full and complete. And again, coming back to our context, modern context, we see that very well. There are some figures I came across by WHO, and they said that overall on Earth, there is 10% prevalence of depression. And it's one of the most, let's say, critical diseases that now humanity has to take care of. It's huge. Okay. And this 10% is only about depression. It doesn't include all the other mental, let's say, afflictions and disorders, such as anxiety and also at work, for example, non-engagement and lack of motivation and so on. And how many people are looking for meaning and purpose? And how many of them are engaging themselves into some form of new age or some authentic spiritual tradition or wisdom tradition and so on? It's amazing to see that. So that tells us something, right, about the status of our modern world. Right? Aparavidya, huge advances, but still this remains. And that is a point here of the argument. Okay, it means that what we only need to know and be clear about is that we need to know objectively what aparavidya can do and give us, and what it cannot do. That's all. And know that as it is important to know things about the world and how it works, it's also important to know as well about Bhuma, because Bhuma is in and through, behind everything that is here. and science will see that, has no access to that. Okay? And because there is at that level a fundamental mistake I make about myself, all the foundation of my living are based on this mistaken conclusion. But the good news is what? That it can be corrected to enable me to live a fuller and a richer life. So that is what this story can tell us. Uma Paravidya, this knowledge. Okay. Now, let's go to a third story, which is interesting as well. Another story, which is also in the form of a dialogue, on how a human being comes to a defining moment, as I said, a turning point in his life or her life, and taking her or him to begin this quest for the infinite, for Uma. And this story is about the famous teacher Yajnavalkya and one of his two wives, Maitreyi. Okay. Well-known story, also very beautiful. So Yajnavalkya goes to Maitreyi and tells her, Maitreyi, my dear, I am about to renounce this life of a grasta, of a household. And I will take up to the life of sannyasa. Hence, I ask for your permission to put an end to the relationship that existing between you two, he's speaking with the other wife as well, and me as your husband. And I would like to divide my property between you and Katyayani, the second wife. So beautiful, because he's asking permission and he's making sure that he's not leaving them in the street, but he's giving them enough to sustain themselves, okay, before taking to a life of sannyasa. Now, Maitreyi, look at this. So Maitreyi asked in reply, you're giving me all this property, and if this, let's take it a little bit further. If this whole earth of wealth, all the wealth that it can exist in the entire world were to be mine, would it make me immortal? Then Yajnavalkya, direct, frank, is not trying to evade the question and just pacify her and just leave. No, because he has been already discussing with Maitreyi, not about this, but he has seen some kind of maybe possibility in her. She is a reflective and a thinking person. So what Yajnavalkya replies is nice. It's very clear. No, you're right, Maitreyi. This will only permit you to live the life of a wealthy person, filled with a lot of possible, let's say, materials for enjoyment and comfort. So your life, in other words, will be just like that of people who have plenty of things. But the truth is, there is no hope, asha, of immortality through wealth. Now, Maitreyi, if this is so, Yajnavalkya, what shall I do with that wealth which will not make me immortal? Amazing, like sharp mind. Tell me, sir, of that alone that you know to be the only means towards immortality, from freedom to freedom from limitation of time. Tell me that alone, which you know, because I know, I have seen you. I know that you have been studying. I know that people have been coming to you, and you are a great teacher. So please tell me that. Then Yajnavalkya, seeing that Maitreyi has made this shift in her life. Now she's right. He was very pleased. And in his reply, there is a lot of affection. There is tenderness. And he said, "Oh Maitreyi, you have been my beloved even before. And now what you say is just after my heart. Therefore, come Maitreyi and take a seat. I will explain to you, I will teach you what you desire. That knowledge of the self, which confers immortality, freedom from time. But as I explain it, as I will teach it to you, reflect attentively on the meaning on each and every word I will tell you." Okay. So this is the story of this dialogue. So what does this story tell us? Okay. And I will also use what we have seen with Narada. So this story is telling us something which amplifies what was told about Narada. Narada became aware of the limitation of all the knowledge that he accumulated, right? And he obtained a direction in this quest. Maitreyi's thoughts got triggered by the departure of Yajnavalkya, and by understanding the limitation of wealth to fulfill also her longing for this Bhuma, for this infinite, right? And here we have equally to be clear. As we have noted for Narada, it's not about depreciating the value of wealth and advocating for living in poverty and despising money. No, it's about clarity, about what wealth can provide and not. It's about being clear about the role of wealth, the way it can help us to have more power, more influence, to solve maybe societal problems, for example. And also at individual level, live with comfort and provide education for our kids and take like holidays. There is nothing wrong in that. There is nothing wrong in wealth as such. But it cannot fulfill the deep longing for the infinite, for completeness that we are looking behind all our pursuits. So this is here the point of this story here. Beautiful dialogue, so revealing. And now let's go to the last story of this evening. And let's turn to another Upanishad now, Katha Upanishad, with the story of the young Nachiketa and Lord Yama. It's a well-known story as well. Okay. And the learning is again about this same theme, about Viveka and Vairagya, this lucidity and this maturity, about what one is looking for, what I am looking for, and what I am pursuing now, and becoming aware of their place and their role, and also their limitation. Okay. So, Katha Upanishad opens with a beautiful, let's say, scenery where the father of Nachiketa is performing a ritual where he's giving away everything, all his possessions. So it's a big ritual, and it involves that he has a lot of wealth. However, his son, Nachiketa, notes that there are some requirements of the ritual which are not followed. Because some of the things he's giving away in this ritual are of no value. The cows, for example, are so old that they cannot produce any milk anymore, and they are barren. So Nachiketa is concerned, and he asks his father, "Father, to whom will you give me away? Maybe I can add to your, let's say, this distribution of wealth." He said it, then again, second time, and a third time. And the father got angry. He said, "To death I will give you." You know, in our English, modern English, we say, you go to hell. Okay, so now it's not about hell; it's about go to Lord Yama. Okay? So Nachiketa accepts his father, gifting him to death. Obviously, he doesn't die; otherwise, there will not be a story which will continue. So he reaches the place of Lord Yama. And Yama is not around. He's quite a busy person, right? And Nachiketa waits patiently for him for 3 nights without any food and water. And as Yama finally returns, as a compensation for not, let's say, honoring his duty towards the guests, he offers Nachiketa 3 books, 3 wishes. Okay. Now, what is the first wish? First wish of Nachiketa is that Yama should allow him to go back to his family, not stay there in the abode of your Lord Yama. And then when he comes back, that his father is calm, free from anger towards him. Right? So Yama said yes, wish granted. Okay. In this second wish, Nachiketa asks Yama, "I've heard about the ritual, of a fire ritual, and I would like you to teach me about the proper execution of this fire ritual, which enables a human being to gain and secure heaven." Lord Yama accepts and teaches him in detail this fire ritual. Then, so it's interesting to see what are these 2 first wishes already. So one is about his own family and his father, which is natural. I mean, Nachiketa is a very practical young boy. Right? First, he guarantees that he's back. He's not stuck in Lord Yama's place. But when he goes back, his father is composed and peaceful and not angry anymore with him. But his concern is not just about his father and his family. This is what is indicated by the second wish. And it's beautiful. Nachiketa knows that the Vedas, okay, the scriptures, speaks about some place where one can be relatively, let's say, free from sorrow, relatively, okay, and enjoy things. And that people are interested in doing that, in going there, going to these places. So why not? Let for the one who are interested know about how to go to these places and get a temporary relief from their suffering and enjoy for some time in this heavenly worlds. So his concern is also for others. Now, what is the third wish about? Very interesting. There is a doubt about a man when he dies and when he. So what is the doubt about? Is he still there? This is what some people say, and others say he's gone. No more. There is no more, nothing anymore, nobody anymore. And Nachiketa asked Lord Yama, I want to know what is the truth of all this. So please teach me about this. Okay. So it's a very loaded question. Okay. Loaded because it's about the mystery of life and death. And even further, you can say, hey, am I also subject to death? And after dying, will I be just reborn? And even further, am I really subject to death and subject to coming and going and live in all this successive, let's say, birth and death cycle? Very loaded question. And Yama is now reluctant, okay? And he says, even gods doubt about this. And they are uncertain about that question because it's very subtle. It's difficult to understand. So he urges Nachiketa to pick another boon, another wish. Nachiketa replies, and he says, hey, if gods themselves have doubt about this, then really, since you are the Lord of death, I don't see any other people, any other person who will be better placed than you to answer this question. And I am capable of understanding. And this is what I want, really. So teach me this. Now, Yama still doesn't go with him. And testing his maturity. He offers him all sorts of wealth and sources of pleasure instead. So what is he saying? As for sons and grandsons who will live 100 years. As for animals, elephants, horses, and gold. Choose as your domain the widest expanse of earth that you want. Not just this little apartment of 100 square meters. And you yourself live as many years as you want to live. Not just this 80, 100. Yama go even further in his offer. And he says, if you think that there is something which is even better or equal to this, what I'm telling, ask for it, I will grant it to you. But don't ask me for this one, the other one. Very tempting, right? So he offers him, in brief, a long life, wealth, to become a ruler and have a huge, let's say, domain and property and possession, rule over a vast region of the world. He offers him then enjoyment, all kind of pleasures you can imagine, with celestial, let's say, nymphs and music and so on, that only you can enjoy with a body of being yourself a deva. He's even offering that to become a deva, right? So Nachiketa, what does he do? He turns down the offer of Yama. Shankara says he's unperturbed, like a vast lake. And his reply is just amazingly lucid and mature. So let's see what he replied. Life of a mortal is short indeed. O Lord Yama. And even if you grant me a longer life, still it will be short. It will be nothing in the countless flow of time. And anyway, all what you have given, you are trying to give me, they waste away the energy of all the senses. So let your horses, your songs, and your dances, it's okay, let them be where they are. Wealth cannot make a man content. Now look at this, hear this well. Then he says, now that I have met you, I will get to keep the wealth. And also I will get to live only as long as you will allow. And you have said, yeah, as long as I wish. But in spite of all this, the only wish that I would like you to grant me is the same wish. It doesn't budge. So the same idea that Maitreyi and Narada that we have seen in the other stories earlier, the same idea and lucidity that they have expressed earlier are taken here to the highest degree by Nachiketa. He says, human life is short, even if you grant me to live a longer span of life. He says that wealth, possession of a vast expanse of lands, and so on, pleasure, including those of these heavenly worlds, they are all limited. They are fleeting. They are ephemeral in terms of what they can do. And if you have listened carefully, in the second part of his answer, what he says, now that I have met you and you are giving me all this, I will take it with me. So I will get to have a wealth and a long life. How clever it is. Right? How clever. This is showing exactly what I was speaking when about Narada and Maitreyi, limitation of knowledge and wealth, right? It has a place. So Nachiketa is not saying, I don't want this at all. He said, now you are offering, I'm taking, but still my boon in this. How clever. How clever and mature is this young boy, right? Now, finally, he concludes by saying, tell me about that thing about which people have doubt. And what is this nature of this I, this self, which is so difficult to understand, you have told me, and whose result is Mahati, infinite, the greatest. Right? And then what happens is that Lord Yama teaches him. Now, so I will not enter in the whole teaching of Katha Upanishad, it will take too much time. So let's see instead and try to recapitulate all what we have seen in this evening. First of all, like this Gandhara Purusha, like Maitreyi or Narada, there is a time in our life when we come face to face with some fundamental questions of existence in different ways. And these fundamental questions are well known, but they're refined here. What am I pursuing exactly? I'm busy doing. Have all these my activities, my pursuit, and all my accomplishments so far, have they given me what I'm looking for? So it's not that all this pursuit and accomplishment have not given us anything. But really speaking, what we are looking for, what I am looking for, is this lasting peace or contentment, a sense of satisfaction. And whatever I have done so far have not given me that. So we saw with Maitreyi the limitation of these common pursuits of wealth in any form you can think of. We saw with Narada the limits of knowledge of this aparavidya, of things in the world. With Nachiketa, what we have seen, the limits of power and pleasures, and also of longevity, long life, which will still be limited. And as we saw very clearly, this awareness is not about then being disenchanted about the world. It's not about turning away from everything. It's about being lucid about what they can provide and not provide at their level. And that is really what is Viveka and Vairagya. And then the next question, which is revealed here by this story, becomes, if this is the situation and the predicament of any human being, then is there a way to solve this deep-rooted sense of inadequacy, of limitation and non-fulfillment? Is there a way? Because it's possible that there is no way. This is how it is, and this is how many people conclude about our life as human beings. This is how it is, and you cannot do more than this. So get the maximum of it and do whatever is corresponding to your talents and skills. Invest in that. Be generous. Live an ethical life. And just it's okay, and then die. This is the truth. So, in these stories, what we come to know is that there is a solution, which is fundamental. And then it is in the form of knowledge of our real nature. We can discover that we are mistaking ourselves to be limited individuals with limited knowledge and power. Whereas in reality, the truth is that we are already what we are longing to be. So the answer is yes, there is a way to solve this deep-rooted sense of dissatisfaction or lack. And it is in the form of knowledge. Right? Now, third point, which is conveyed by this story. This knowledge has to be imparted by a teacher. Without teacher, there is no way that we can figure out what we are. No way. This is why this teaching is in the form of a pramana, a means of knowledge. Using words, the teacher make us see who we are. Fourth point. This teaching is imparted only upon asking. It's not that, I like to think about this. Imagine you're like Einstein, you're a genius in in this physics. They have come to discover the amazing theory about relativity and so on. So you are not going on all over and try to teach everybody and knock that on all doors and say, hey, I have cracked the whole thing in the mystery of the universe. I will teach you. Right? So this teaching is imparted only upon asking when time has come. And Narada, Maitreyi, Nachiketa all asked. They asked Sanat Kumar, they asked Yajnavalkya, they asked Lord Yama to teach them. So the importance of having a teacher is so essential. See, in the modern world, you find so many people who are hoping, spiritual hoping. I mean, you understand them. They're trying to find something which can satisfy them. And it seems that they are not really. So many teachers were able to address this longing that they have. So they go from one teacher or the other. Or then some say, no, I mean, there is nobody. Let me read by myself. Let me read the Bhagavad Gita by myself. Let me read the other spiritual tradition by myself. And let me bring all together. There is a truth behind all of them. And I will crack by myself the whole thing. Doesn't work. Maybe that hopping can help you at one point realize that it doesn't lead you anything much, anywhere much. So what is needed is a teacher who has the methodology of teaching within, who has been exposing himself to this teaching for a certain length of time, who has looked into the texts, who has reflected himself upon the whole thing, who have cleared his doubts, including doubts coming from contemporary Upanishads, contenders, and who has also discovered the reality of himself or herself being Uma, is Brahman. Yeah. So what we'll do now, so I will end now this talk, and tomorrow evening, so we'll explore further an imagery, which is a very beautiful imagery of these two birds, which is found in the Upanishad. And also the story of the Devas and the Yaksha. So why I chose these two stories? Because they are powerful and will help us understand some more central dimension of this teaching. And what are these dimensions? That can we come to know that we are this infinite? How do we live with this knowledge? Once I know, how will I live with that? And also, how this Bhuma, this infinite, this Brahman, cannot be objectified. But it is self-evident and self-existent. Okay, so we'll explain all this in detail tomorrow evening. So thank you very much for listening. So any questions?
Thank you, Suryaji. That was wonderful listening to you. So you narrated beautifully about Yajnavalkya and Maitreyi. And we know that how Maitreyi asked so many questions and inquired about Atman. So how does one cultivate the desire for that truth? You know, that I want only that truth and nothing else. So how does one cultivate that kind of mindset and thinking?
Yeah. So one thing is that, see, it's not something that you cultivate deliberately. One thing. It's like you're not trying to cultivate this viveka and vairagya. In fact, what happens, it's a little bit more tricky as a process. As we have seen through this example, Narada was a very accomplished person. Maitreyi, you can guess, also a very, let's say, mature woman. So what I see when I am teaching people here is that they are not cultivating this desire for freedom. It comes to them at some point, okay? And for this, there is a special, let's say, punya. We would say in this tradition, what we say is that it is because you have already lived enough and all your experiences have led you to some vague understanding. It's not clear yet, some vague understanding that maybe there is something else. Maybe, yeah, just having some car and some apartment and getting married and have kids and then spend money and go on holidays and then give some charity. There is something more about life than just this. So this kind of like the vague kind of feeling dawns upon us, okay? And then the experiences of life also can teach us that, hey, I thought that, see, I know some young people who tells me, yeah, what I want is that before the age of 35 or 40, I want to be a crorepati or a multimillionaire, right? And then they get it because they are clever and they are committed and that this is their goal. But after they get there, what happens? So through experience also, you come to know to some extent the limitation of what you are, let's say, pursuing. So now the key is that based on this big kind of awareness, then based on that, when this person has also another punya, which is what? To find a teacher or to fall upon some, Swamiji used to say, apatata jnanam, okay? Some back cover, some books, which tells him, hey, there is something else than or that you don't know. There is something which is called Atma, right? There is something which is called Ishvara and so on. So then he goes there, and then if the teacher he meets is good enough to, here I would say, to strengthen this vague preliminary feeling, right? Then this viveka and vairagya can be developed further. Otherwise, it's not something which dawns upon you, okay? And while the teaching, after you get into contact with the teacher, then you can again either reflect back on what all you have done. So this is exactly the Mundaka Upanishad, Pariksha Lokan, Karma Chitan, and so on, right? So reflecting back upon your past experience, and also while you are continuing to study, then your current experiences, now you're analyzing them with the light which is different. And you come to see clearly, yeah, this is what they can give me. But now you are not giving them either more value than what they can give, or give them less value what that they have. And this is really this clarity, right? Then examining both past experiences and what the present experiences you are undergoing, then it becomes clear. Then this becomes sharp, right? So in other words, Manushyatam, being born as a human being, is a huge thing. It's not in your hand. You are just landing upon earth, like Gandhara Purusha in this forest. Now, Mumukshutvam, not totally in your hand in this life. The only thing which is in your hand is then to be aware of this vague sense of dissatisfaction and decide to take it on and pursue and try to find some answers to that. There are people there. And not just after some difficult moment. This vairagya you get after you have been, let's say, battered by some difficult event, doesn't last if you take it on. Then this mumukshatvam, this is why this mumukshatvam is not ordinary. And then acharya, you need a teacher to bring that at the maximum level of clarity and commitment. Yeah? And this is growing.
Yeah, wonderful. That was really wonderful. And the last sentence that you made, it leads to me another question. That is, today is also Guru Purnima, and all the dialogues that we see, is a conversation between Guru and a Shishya.
Yeah.
All these stories are like that. And nowadays, we have come to a point wherein we will listen to some YouTube videos or we will read a book and we know everything. So that is the mindset. So why has Upanishad focused so much on Guru Parampara, Guru Shishya type of dialogues and teaching methodology? What is the importance of a guru?
Yeah. So I would reply here by giving you an analogy. Okay. Imagine you're undergoing just a therapy, psychological therapy, right? Here there is a one-to-one conversation. Yeah. And the therapist is accompanying you. It's helping you to reflect upon your, let's say, beliefs and notions and so on, how you are feeling. And he's helping you to see a little bit differently what you are going through. But the point is the therapist is accompanying you for a certain length of time, right? Now imagine just at the psychological level, okay? You just write the books or you just watch videos on what is therapy, what are the different wounds that an individual is subject to, what are the distortions and so on. Where will you get? Okay. So what is true at that level, which is just a normal psychotherapy. Imagine now that we're speaking at the level of questioning the very assumption that I am this individual confined this body, mind, sense complex. Without the guru accompanying you closely with this affection, with this guidance, with this tenderness, with this sharpness, bringing you facing some big doubts that you had, and also giving you enough freedom. See, Swamiji was amazing. When we were studying with him, he was not over-controlling us. He was not telling us, this is what you have to do about your life and so on, but he was there. And we knew that whenever we needed to see him, even after we did the course and so on, right, we could go to him. And one little word, one little, let's say, half an hour spent with him, whatever time spent with him, will like clear up and open big the windows. And what is amazing is that the next time you will meet him, I remember some personal, let's say, experience, he will remember. Because we had studied with him, so we were close, let's say, to him. Right? And he would remember, and he would say, hey, what about this thing that I had told you that time? How is it going now? Right? So this proximity, this access, this guiding, which is like a presence which is there, is very much required. You cannot do away with that. Okay. Nowadays, we are giving classes, for example, my wife and myself, online. So it's fine. Okay. I mean, it's a good substitute or a good, let's say, palliative when you don't have the opportunity to meet the person. But obviously, we cannot just do that. We have to have moments where we have to spend one-on-one or in small groups with the student. Correct. We need that. Yeah. Irreplaceable. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And there is a question in the story about the dialogue with Maitreyi. Yeah. Is there a section of dialogue with the other wife Katyayini?
No, I've not seen that in Brihadaranyaka. There is a small note which is saying that why I was saying that Yajnavalkya had a special relationship with Maitreyi because he knew she was mature, and I'm sure it's indicative very implicitly in the Upanishad that he saw that she was mature and she had something, and she was like curious about what he was doing. Whereas Katyayani was like taking care, and this is fine also, of all her duties, and she was taking care of the house and of taking care of Yajnavalkya and also Maitreyi and so on. But she had no interest in that. So it's beautiful. See, it's how Yajnavalkya is not pushing anything on Katyayani. And
Correct.
Katyayani also is not going and asking for this, right? Katyayani asks for that. She will say, oh, wonderful. Okay, I am sad because I love you as my husband. Now this relationship is over. But I know that in our Shastra, it's okay. And I give you my permission to go. And she would be okay. She will be sad. It's not that she will not be sad, but she will allow him to live. But she will not press him with the questions like Maitreyi, right? Yeah.
Yes, yes. And there is another question. What is the logic behind decisions that leads to karma? Is it viveka or forces of senses?
What is the logic behind decisions?
Decisions
Right?
that leads to karma.
To leads to me acting
Yes.
upon what I see. Yes. Is it what?
Is it viveka or forces of senses?
Senses are just giving you or reporting some data. Okay. They're just giving you, yeah, this is what is happening here. There is a person here standing in front of me, and they able you to hear what he's saying. Okay. They are just reporters of different kind of information. That's all. Right? But then the buddhi comes and makes sense of what the senses are reporting to the mind. And then the buddhi, then takes upon, first interprets what it can interpret. And sometimes it need not be very objective. And it can add a lot of this pratibhasika, this subjectivity in the looking at what the senses are reporting. You can see the same thing on another person, but your perception can be fraught with subjectivity and fear, right? So this is well known, right? Now, this viveka is really about making sure that, first of all, you are not in a subjective, let's say, kind of mode as you are taking on all these data and analyzing them. And the second is that this viveka has to be backed by some criteria. For example, dharma, right? Basic, right? Is my action in line and in conformity with dharma? Am I here debasing, hurting anybody else or myself in the process? So viveka on the basis of dharma will help you take a decision. The senses are just reporters. So I think this would be the answer.
Yes, yes, I suppose so.
Yeah.
I think that concludes the Q&A. And Suryaji, thank you so much once again for sharing these wonderful insights from Upanishads. And we look forward to your talk tomorrow. Viewers, please tune into session tomorrow at the same time. Suryaji will be speaking on the Upanishads and stories from them and giving us more insights into the truth that we are seeking. And we will again meet tomorrow. With this, we will conclude. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
Thank you.